Hello, today we'll be discussing the DAST URL coverage tab. First we'll be discussing the URL scanned subtab. On this tab you'll see all of the URLs that we have currently scanned for your site. You'll see the URLs that we've scanned, as well as their status. There's three possible statuses. If you go to the filter, you can see all three. We have a green tested, orange off domain, and a red error. If you do want to check through these statuses, or using the filter if you wanted to check for a specific URL, I would recommend using the last completed assessment rather than the current one, as we may not have gotten to all the URLs in the current assessment. So you'll see here a green tested status, which means we saw it, we tested it, we're good. You might also see a red error. So this error is actually clickable. You can click on it and you can then see what kind of error it is that we were getting. In this case, it's a 500 internal server error. Now, errors aren't always bad. We often find vulnerabilities on error pages, but if you notice an error on a page that really shouldn't be getting an error, you might want to look into it on your end. We also have an orange off domain. Basically, how you can use this is if you notice that the domain that is specified should actually be part of the assessment and is an important part of your site, you can then go to the Overview tab, and on the Overview tab at the bottom, you can request it to be added as an associated hostname. The next sub-tab is Scan Rules. So this is where you can dictate to our scanner what you do and don't want us to scan. So what you would do is you would click Edit, and then you would click this branch icon, and then you can add a rule. Now this is based on regex, so you don't have to put in the full URL if you don't want to, unless you need to be really specific. You can just put in a file path or a term, anything like that. So for example, if you were to put in the test file path and you leave it on include, else exclude, what this is telling our scanner is that for any URL that includes this test file path, you want to include it. But any URL that does not include the test file path, you want to exclude from the scope of the scan. You can also do the inverse. Exclude, else include. What this is telling our scanner is that if you see any URLs with this file path, you're going to exclude them. But any other URLs, you're going to include. And you can make as many of these rules as you need to. But I always recommend testing your rules. So I would recommend putting in a mixture of URLs you would expect the rule to match on and ones you wouldn't expect it to match on. And then hitting test coverage, and it'll specify which ones were included and not. That way you can make sure the rule is functioning as you would expect. But if you need any help with this, if you're not used to using regex or anything like that, just reach out to technical support and we can give you a hand. If you do make any rules that you no longer want to use, make sure to remove them, as the rules do take effect immediately. The last section is user added URLs. So here you can add any entry points that you'd like as long as they're get entry points. We don't allow you to add post entry points, as posts often are sensitive functionality and could be detrimental to your site if we were to scan them. So if there are any post entry points you need added, you can go ahead and create a case, send it to our technical support team. We can review them, make sure it's safe to add it to the scope of the scan, and then we can do so on our end. But if you would like to add get entry points, you would go to add URLs and go to add manually. Then just add each URL as a separate line and click next, follow the steps, and you can add them. So any entry points you've added will be listed here. You might also see entry points added there, including posts, and that's because we've added them on the back end as we go through our configurations on your site. One of the steps we do is adding entry points. But if you do want to delete any entry points, and that includes entry points we've added as well, you can go ahead and click these and delete them. If you have any questions on any of these three subtabs of the URL coverage tab, please feel free to reach out to our technical support team.